the committee, and I'll hand back to Mr. Bartlett to detail the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, the purpose of this report is to advise Council of 7 recommendations by the Gunnedah Local Traffic
Committee, and I'll hand back to Mr. Bartlett to detail the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, the purpose of this report is to advise Council of 7 recommendations by the Gunnedah Local Traffic
Committee, and I'll hand back to Mr. Bartlett to detail the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, the purpose of this report is to advise Council of 7 recommendations.
For those that are listening online, we're just having a few difficulties working through those at the moment. I believe we're now right to go. So I'll hand back to Mr. Bartlett to detail the recommendation of item 7.2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, the purpose of this report is to advise Council of 7 recommendations made by the Gunnedah Local Advisory Traffic Committee following its meeting held on 5th of August 2020. In relation to item 6, the Gunnedah Tamworth Cycle Race, the Tamworth Cycle Club has written to Council advising that the event has been cancelled due to COVID-19, so that item is no longer required.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Ms. Markey, are we able to remove that from the recommendation before Council? So councillors, as you now see on the screen, we have a minor change to the resolution or the recommendation that's before you. So I'll now call for elected member who'd like. Thank you. Councillor Moses has moved that motion and seconded by Councillor Luke. Councillor Moses, do you wish to speak to the motion as a mover of the motion?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll now call for elected member who'd like to speak against the motion or ask a question. Councillor Luke, as the seconder of the motion, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That'll be the case then. I'd like to put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? The motion carried. Moving on to item 7.3, street light LED upgrade. I'll hand back to Mr. Bartlett to detail the recommendation for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, the purpose of this report is to seek Council endorsement of an offer from Essential Energy to upgrade all of the existing street lights within the Gunnedah local government area to LED luminaires.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Now call for our elected member to thank you, Councillor Hook, and seconded by Councillor Campbell. Councillor Hook, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a very good recommendation. It's a win-win for the community and a win-win for Gunnedah Shire Council, and I would commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hook. I now call for elected member who'd like to speak against the motion or ask a question. Councillor Campbell, as the seconder of the motion, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That be the case, I'll put the motion on in favour.
Aye.
Against? The motion carried. Moving on to item 7.4, Gunnedah Memorial Pool Kiosk and operating hours, and I'll hand back to Mr. Bartlett to detail the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, the purpose of this report is to seek Council's approval to operate the Gunnedah Memorial Pool Complex summer kiosk internally to extend the summer swimming season and to reduce the complex's overall daily operating hours.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett, and Councillor Swain has moved those recommendations, so they now become a motion and seconded by Councillor Fuller. Councillor Swain, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, well, just quickly, I guess, Mr. Mayor, I think it's thanks for the staff for the report. It's a learning process, isn't it, that we're going through with the new pool, and I think it's an opportunity for seeing how reduced hours will work, and also the opportunity to then be in control of the kiosk. So let's see how that goes. So I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. Do I have an elected member who'd like to ask a question? Speak, Councillor O'Keefe, would you like to ask a question?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, through to you. Question relates specifically to the kiosk. Understand we obviously haven't sought tenders to operate the kiosk for the upcoming season. Do we have any understanding of whether there was any market appetite for that, or not really?
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe, for the question. And through you, Mr Mayor, neither of the previous operators have expressed any desire to continue operating our facility, and we have not heard anything from any other potential operators within the community.
Councillor Fuller, as the seconder of the motion, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
I'll now ask, are there any further questions or councillors who'd like to speak against the motion before I put the motion? That be the case, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that motion carried. Moving on to item 7.5, that's the Gunnedah Airport operations, and I'll hand back to Mr Butler to detail the recommendation before you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you. The purpose of this report is to seek funding to commence a comprehensive pavement airport inspection and field survey.
Thank you, Mr Bartlett. Our call for active member, thank you, Councillor Hook has moved the motion. Do I have a second to the motion? Councillor Fuller has seconded the motion. Councillor Hook has the move of the motion. You wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that this is an extremely important move. It was noted that we should have let the motion lapse last time, but I think we've had more time to consider. If this motion does not proceed, I think it really means the potential death knell of the airport as we know it. And at this particular time, this money needs to be spent so that we have got a very, very good understanding of what is needed to bring this airport up to standard. And I think we owe it to the public to have all the information at our fingertips before we make any decision one way or the other in respect of the airport. So I commend the spending of $73,000 to get that information together so we can make a decent decision in the future about the future of our airport. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hook. I'll now open for any elected member who'd like to ask a question or speak against the motion. Councillor Hook.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wondered if the officer could tell the chamber, give us the information on the number of emergency movements such as by police, fire, ambulance, health that was undertaken over the last 12 months or in the 1920 year.
Thank you, Councillor Luke, for the question. Through you, Mr Mayor. There were 65 takeoffs and landings that were exempt from fees last financial year, equating to a total of 130 movements. Those movements covered emergency services and defence movements, RFS, SES, police, ambulance, etc. And there was one angel flight undertaken during that period.
Thank you.
Councillor Fuller, as the second of the motion, you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's something that we have to do. We've got to do this to satisfy all councillors and the community. Thank you.
I'll now call for elected member who'd like to ask a further question or speak against the motion.
Mr Mayor, through you, a question, if I may. The RFS has, and council are working together to potentially build a facility which includes, aerial firefighting capability, for lack of a better term. The facility is, I guess, is that contingent on some of this activity and work, or will that be contingent, on upgrades, or do we think that no, that it would not be?
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe, for the question. Through you, Mr Mayor. It's unlikely that the RFS would be able to proceed with that element of their facility if we were not to continue with this down this path.
Councillor Hook, we've had 2 for and 2 questions. I will afford you a right reply if you would like one.
Only I'd like to pick up on Councillor O'Keefe's comment. It's something that I certainly hadn't considered, and something hasn't been considered in any prior discussions, and I think it's a very relevant point that we have the highest capacity of firefighting facilities we possibly can in this district, especially with what has gone on in the immediate past. In the summers, we'd be lucky not to have been affected, but that doesn't mean that we may not be affected with fires in the future. So I think it behoves us really to go ahead and do whatever is necessary to see what it needs to be done to bring this airport up to standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, councillors, I'd like to put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that motion carried. Moving on to item 7.6, which is 2020 special Local Roads Transport Congress, and I'll hand back to Mr. Bartlett to detail the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. This report is to inform councillors of the 2020 Special Local Roads Transport Congress to be held in Wagga Wagga on the 16th to the 18th of November this year, and to ascertain council's attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. I now call for nominations. Councillor Fuller.
Would you like to go, Mr. Mayor?
I would accept nomination. I'll now call for further nominations. No further nominations? Then I declare unsuccessful. I guess. So you'll now see in the recommendation before you, Councillor Jamie Chaffey as the elected member who will be in attendance. So councillors, in saying that now, I'd like to request an elected member to move the recommendation becomes a motion. Thank you, Councillor Fuller, and seconded by Councillor Moses. Councillor Fuller, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for accepting.
I'll now call for any elected member who'd like to ask a question or speak against the motion. Councillor Moses is the secretary. Do you wish to speak?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Saying that, then I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Bartlett, for your contribution to our extraordinary meeting of council. I'll now move on to item 8, which is the business and finance reports to the extraordinary meeting, and I'd like to now call on Mr. Connor to detail his recommendations, starting with item 8.1, which is the draft 2019-20 financial statement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the council. Councillors, the purpose of the report before you is to present to you the draft 2019-20 financial statements for your review and subsequent referral to audit. Also contained in the resolution are a number of compliance statements, and including delegating authority to both the General Manager, Mayor, Deputy General Manager and myself to authorise the statements post-audit, and also to finalise the date at which the auditors' reports will be presented to the public and the final issue date. All are done annually by us to be expedient with the time frames between now and audit and lodgement. Commend the report as it stands and welcome any questions council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. I'll now call for elected member to move the recommendation become a motion. Thank you, Councillor Swain. Seconded by Councillor Fuller. Councillor Swain, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, we had a workshop just previously to this meeting where Mr. Connor went through the financial statements with us and clarified quite a few questions we had, and I guess we talked about where council was sitting at this stage of our council cycle. I'm proud of what we've been doing as a community and as a council, as we have managed the last 4 years, but particularly in the last 12 months, going through this virus that's affected so many businesses and so many organisations. But the opportunity that our council has had to contribute to continue contributing to our community, I don't think has gone unnoticed. I'm proud, as I said, of the work that the staff have put in to complete these statements. I'm proud of all the workforce outside the doors who go out and just do the work that we organise from in here. So I think it's a good outcome. I'm happy to move it, and I think that as a council we should, coming to the end of our 4-year term, although we won't be finalising it, I think we all should be feeling proud that we're part of such a unique, sustainable and strong council, and thankful for the enormous amount of work that's gone on behind the scenes. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. I'll now call for elected member who'd like to ask a question or speak against the motion. Councillor Fuller is the second of the motion. Wish to speak.
I'd just like to congratulate the staff, Mr. Connor, and all of the staff in your department. So congratulations, and a great explanation this afternoon, which fully made every councillor aware of what we're doing. So thank you very much, and congratulations to all the staff involved. Thank you.
Just before I put the motion, councillors, I too would like to add my weight behind, very similar to Councillor Swain and Fuller in their comments. I'd certainly like to congratulate our General Manager as the one employee that the elected members have of his performance and his organisation's performance in the last 12 months. These results show a modest surplus, which in my book is exactly what we want, and delivering so much as Councillor Swain has certainly articulated. The community is going through a very tough time. I too am proud of Council's reactions and actions to support our community, and that's reflected in unemployment rates and population not dropping, which I'm very proud to say is an outcome, I'm sure, that's supported by council, and a lot of communities in New South Wales aren't as fortunate. Also, I'd like to say in that past performance of councillors before this council certainly have put us in a very strong position to enable us to be able to take the actions that we have and see those great results over the last 4 years of this council. So congratulations, as I said once again, Mr. General Manager and the entire executive team, which filters down to everybody within the operation for performance and results. In saying that, now I'd like to put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
I'll call that unanimously supported. I'll move on to item 8.2, which is 2020-21 budget review of August 2020. I'll hand back to Mr. Taylor to detail the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the council. Councillors, the purpose of this report is to present to you a revision to the 2020-21 budget position, primarily as outlined in the report for a couple of high-level reasons. One's the removal of a contra line item dividend, and the other larger ones are associated with changes to indexation across our budget, as is outlined in the report. Main one of those is associated with the changes in indexes prevailing for materials, contracts and otherwise. And the second one's to do with employee costs, as we now know, that the mandated increases as per the recently adopted award for local government is slightly lower than what we previously estimated back in February. So we're advising both of those, and I'll again commend the report. Welcome any questions council might have.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. I now call elected member to move the recommendation to become a motion. Thank you, Councillor Campbell, and seconded by Councillor Moses. Councillor Campbell, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Now call for elected member who'd like to ask a question or speak against the motion. Councillor Moses, as the secretary, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That be the case, I'd like to put the motion on favour.
Aye.
Against? Declare that motion carried. Moving on to item 8.3, which is the 2019-20 budget outcome summary for the financial year. And I'll hand back to Mr. Connor to detail the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, councillors, the report before you, the purpose of which is to present a budget outcomes for the 2019-20 financial year. I know we're bouncing around. This is similar to the results that we'll see in the financial statements, instead of being on a macro level for financial results. It's presented on a per service level results against budget for your information. I commend the report. Welcome any questions council might have.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. I'll now call for elected member. Thank you, Councillor Hook, and seconded by Councillor Luke. Councillor Hook, do you wish to speak to the motion as member?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I now call for elected member who'd like to ask a question or speak against the motion. Councillor Luke is the second of the motion to speak.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That be the case then, I'll put the motion. Councillor Swain, would you like to speak?
No, I'm just going to make a comment, Mr. Mayor. My eyes are going nearly round and round and round in circles. Just the little bit that we've had today, I don't know how Mr. Connor says it every day.
Councillors, I'd now like to put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that motion carried. Now, councillors, you'll be aware you have a late supplementary report from the General Manager, and I'll hand to the General Manager now just to give you a brief rundown. We will actually need a mover once the General Manager's given us a brief outline of the late report. I will ask for a mover and a seconder for this report to be accepted extraordinarily. Thank you, Mr. Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll frame these comments such that I won't need to put the report again if such a motion does come to the table. The late item has been circulated. Thank you, Mr. Markey, in hard copy there, as well as dropped to you this afternoon electronically. But essentially, the item arises because of a late approach from the state government to seek confirmation of co-funding from council to the Sale Yards Master Plan project delivery. The total project is $17.55 million, as detailed in the report. The additional contribution being sought from council is up to $1.5 million. So it may in fact be less than that, but it would see council contributing about $3.55 million to the total project, and the balance $14 million coming from hopefully the state government if that approach is successful. Again, the late nature of it is because of an approach from the state government to seek council's confirmation in writing of a willingness to provide that co-contribution. In putting this to council, I'd like to acknowledge certainly the discussions I've had with the state government for their willingness to step forward and help fund a project where we lost or we didn't get the success from the federal government in funding under the Building Better Regions Fund. In gaining the state government support, Mr. Connor again was instrumental in turning around some emails and requests from the state government. So in talking to the state government, they have by name acknowledged Mr. Connor's contribution to the process and ensuring that we were in the best position we could be to potentially gain this $14 million in funding. So I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Connor, as well as just saying that I'll be pleased to take any questions in relation to the report.
Thank you, Mr. Groff. On our call for elected members to move that the late report be accepted and heard. Thank you, Councillor Hook, and seconded by Councillor Ford. I'm now going to put that motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that motion carried. So in saying that now, councillors, you will see on the screen the recommendation, and you've heard the General Manager speak to the recommendation. So I'm now going to call for elected member to move. The recommendation becomes a motion. And moved by Councillor Hook and seconded by Councillor Luke. Councillor Hook, would you like to speak to the motion as amended?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Connor in getting the project to this particular point. Also to point out that although we might have to spend some extra money, that money will be well spent. There's not very often do you get state or federal government coming forward with such a large contribution, with a relatively small contribution from council. It's an opportunity that is going to see the agricultural industries, especially around livestock, take it off into a new direction. It will certainly bring us into the 21st century as far as selling is concerned. We have got a very, very old sale yard complex, one that is now, I believe, no longer fit for purpose. And the new complex is going to really put us in the forefront of agriculture into the future. Very, very unlikely, if we don't allow this motion to proceed, will we ever get the opportunity again. So I commend this motion to my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hook. I now call for elected member who'd like to ask a question or speak against the motion. Councillor Swan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not speaking against the motion. I guess I'm just a bit concerned about the money. This isn't in our budget. So just, I guess, a point of clarification from the General Manager or the Mayor as to just exactly where we're going to find 1.5 million.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I may defer to Mr. Connor. I know it's been addressed in a discussion this afternoon, but I think it's appropriate that Mr. Connor, as the executive responsible for the project, has the pleasure of delivering the good news on that one.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager, and through the Mayor to Council. The short answer, Councillor Swain, is that we would most likely take out loan funds serviced by the Sale Yards business unit. The amount is additional to what we've currently budgeted, but it is still, with it added, it's still less than the amount that we put through our master plan. So at that point in time, we expected that we may end up having to fund as much as a third of the overall cost, hoping that we'd get a third from the state and a third from the federal governments. But what we actually applied for was for far more than that. It was for more than 90%, with larger contributions from the state and federal government and less from ourselves, in order to try and benefit as best as possible from the two major funding tranches. So this is an increase on the amounts that we already have in a Sale Yards restricted asset and another restricted grant fund, but it's still less than the amounts modelled in Council's adopted master plan that we expect we may need to contribute. So, that is a question.
Thanks, Mr. Connor.
I'll now call for any further questions or elected members who'd like to speak against the motion.
Mr. Mayor, through you, I guess a supplementary question to tease a little bit more information out of Mr. Connor. The figure that was originally a higher figure, more than what we're seeking to contribute as part of the master plan, my understanding it was modelled that the restricted asset could service more than that level of debt, essentially out of the operating result from the sale yards.
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor O'Keefe, absolutely. The modelling of the state master plan is premised on the sale yards facility still remaining in a very strong operating profit or surplus, whilst servicing the model debt, which was $4 million in the master plan. This would be talking about 1.5. Part of that obviously would be reflected in the fees charged to vendors, but that was all part of the modelling consultation that was done. So it is predicated on the facility itself remaining very strong and financial. And in fact, it would be expected that potentially far greater upside exists in our revenue streams post this sort of projects.
Apologies, Councillor Luke, I got out of sequence there. As the secretary of the motion, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's been a very interesting and impressive process that as a council we've gone through from basically some of the earliest days and seen all the considered steps that the staff have gone through with the community and with ourselves to get to the point of it being a project ready for funding. It seemed at one stage that it was lovely plans that were going to not be realised. This is lovely to see that it's getting towards the more pointy end of that long process, and it's wonderful to see, and looks like it's going to go ahead. So well done to all involved.
Thank you, Councillor Luke. Councillor Hook, would you like a right? We haven't actually had a councillor speak against it, but I will offer you a right reply if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy.
Well then, councillors, I'd like to put the motion on the table.
Right.
Call it unanimously supported. And councillors, that was the last item on our extraordinary meeting of council, so I'll declare the meeting closed at 4:32. Thank you for your attendance. Much appreciated. And for those listening online, thank you.
I was wondering what the overall line was. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Someone writing a book. Where's the line? Yeah, so I just thought it was a line. I thought Donna was here.